It wasn't all that long ago that the steam locomotive was as common on the railways as the diesel is today, and many people were sorry to see it go. About the only time people have the opportunity to see a steam loco today is at one of the places where they've been specially preserved for tourist or educational purposes, or in situations like this, where model railway enthusiasts are carrying on with the steam tradition. Bathurst has quite an active band of railway modellers, and they take their locos for a run each month, much to the delight of local children. To help out with the study of transport at West Bathurst School, two railway buffs, Stuart Livesey, whose interest is in miniature railways, and Ron Alloway, who actually makes and runs these larger models, took some of their trains into the classroom to give students a closer look. They talked to the children about the history of the steam engine and showed them how it works.
The first steam engine was invented in the 1700s, and it wasn't a steam engine like the ones you can see here. It didn't have wheels and it didn't run on track. It was what they call a stationary steam engine, like this one. Now, I'm going to light this one up and put the fire underneath it, and while it's getting hot, I'll tell you a little bit about it. I'll put a bit of metho in there. Pop back on. And get the outside. There. Now, the first steam engines were used to pump water out of mines. They were very simple things, just like this one is. They'd build a fire underneath there, and they'd fill this part with water, and that's what this one is filled with, and they'd let the steam build up, and the steam would then come out of here, down through here into the cylinder, and it would turn that wheel there. And then once the steam had been used, it'd be pushed up that pipe there and out of the funnel. And that steam engine there'd be something hooked up to the other side of this wheel, and it would drive a belt. Okay. Now I'll take the fire out from underneath, and gradually, as the heat in there gets less, the steam gets less, and the thing will finally stop. I've got to hold on to it because this table is very slippery. There it is. And that's how the first steam engines used to work. Very simple things, just like that. In 1829, they built the first steam engine, and it was a very simple looking thing, just like this one here. They gradually, as you can see them, these are some of the early steam engines. And they gradually got bigger and bigger as they went along. And in a steam engine there are three sorts of wheels. There's the wheels that drive it, like that wheel there, that wheel there. There are wheels that carry weight, which we'll see over on this train. That wheel there carries the weight, helps carry the weight. And these wheels here are used to help guide the train around the curves. I mean, the driver of an engine doesn't stand there with a big steering wheel. It's the rails that do the steering, and they steer them with these little wheels here that follow the curve and so help the engine go around. Now, as they built the engines, they found that they could do different things with them. They gradually got bigger into engines like this. And finally, or towards about midway through the steam engines, they built them into things that looked like this. Now here is a wheel that's a driving wheel, and this was a passenger engine. And the bigger the wheel they found, the faster the engine could go. And you can see there that some of the wheels were getting quite big. Later on, they sort of eased those wheels down a bit. They didn't make them quite so big because they found that while they could have big wheels and the engines could go very fast, they couldn't pull very much. Now the engines got bigger and bigger, but they found, as the loads got bigger that they had to pull it, the only way they could get an engine to pull it was to have actually two engines. And here are some photos of two engines pulling a train. Then they found that from there they would actually put two engines into one, and here is a photograph of what they called a Garrett. Now a Garrett steam engine, when you come past you'll see that there's an engine there and an engine there, with the boiler hung between the middle of it. But even those weren't powerful enough to pull the trains, and they would actually, there's some photos here showing some Garretts with two engines connected. From there they went up to even bigger engines like this one here. Now that one is a 57 class. This is a model of a 57 class, and you can see how big it was. 4 driving wheels on each side, 2 wheels up the front here to help guide it round the track, and a wheel here at the back to help carry the load. And they were very powerful engines. But they weren't powerful enough. The loads kept getting bigger, and they found that they couldn't, in Australia anyway, they couldn't build steam engines any bigger. And that's when diesels took over. That's what we see on the railways today. A diesel engine can pull a much bigger load than a steam engine can, and it doesn't cost as much to run.
Ron Alloway told the children that it took him about 3,000 hours to build this model.
Almost 100 weight complete, and runs on coal.
Mr. Alloway, how did you come to be interested in trains?
Well, I've always been interested in trains ever since I was a little boy, and I really enjoy making the parts more so than running them. I just like to make each little part as well as I can, and that I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. This particular locomotive is a model of a Canadian Pacific shunting engine, and all the parts are made from stock material. I didn't buy any castings. You can buy castings for these wheels. They're already cast and you just machine them and various other parts, but I made them all out of scrap stuff and bought little pieces of steel and so on. And it works at 100 pound pressure, and it will pull approximately 30 weight.
This model is electrically driven and is capable of pulling about 60 kilograms. This one is steam operated. Ron says that he started it right back in 1944, and he says that he hasn't quite finished it yet. Ron, seeing this on television is going to be as close as many kids would ever get to one of these.
Oh,
now,
yes.
they don't really understand, many people just don't understand how a loco works, a steam loco works. Could you give us some sort of a rundown on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, there's coal goes here, the water's in here, and
now that section on the back, that really isn't attached to the main body of the loco. That just is for simply carrying
coal and
water, right?
That's right.
Okay.
To initially start off, you put a handle in this pump, which is in the water, submerged in the water, and you pump water into the boiler until you show it on the gauge about quarter full, and then you light the fire with small sticks of wood until you have a fan on here creating a suction driven with a little battery to start off with, and it creates a vacuum.
So on the model you artificially create the draft by putting a vacuum on there, whereas on the full-scale loco that would just naturally occur because of the size of the thing. Right, okay.
Right. The fire is built up in here, and when the pressure reaches working pressure around from 60 to 90 pounds, this is forward gear. Go forward, that's to go backwards. You put in forward gear and you open the throttle.
Now in here, this is basically full of water and with long tubes running through, right?
This is a long container, and it has a section here which is jacketed, carrying water all around, and the fire's in the middle of it with a grate. And along here we have tubes which carry the heat through, and these tubes are surrounded by water.
Right.
Which gives it a lot of heat.
So
surface.
with the draft, the flames are drawn through the tubes and up there, and as they go through, they boil the water.
That's
right.
right.
Okay.
The steam is then taken to the throttle, which is here, and it is then taken down to these cylinders, passes down to the cylinders, through the valves into the cylinders, and pushes against the piston, which in turn pushes the crosshead going forward.
Right,
It
so
pushes the crosshead that way, and the connecting rod transmits the power to the wheels.
now that seems an extremely complicated sort of driving gear down there, that mechanism. Were these very efficient?
Well, not really that efficient, but they're very reliable, and there was plenty of coal about, and they're fairly economical.
Now
But,
this model that you've got, I've seen you actually with people on the back of this pulling it. Now, what sort of load will it pull?
Well, it'll pull approximately 12 to 15 people.
So 12 to 15 people on the back of this, you know.
On,
And now,
on suitable carriages.
now that gives some indication of the power of steam, but what gives the grip? I mean, now why doesn't a little loco like this with 15 people on the back of it, why doesn't it slip?
Well, it will under some conditions, but I have hidden under here some lead weights to get as much adhesion as I can. You're limited by the adhesion. You've always got plenty of power, but it will slip. But
it's determined by the weight that's on it.
That's right.
So if you actually sat on that and rode, you'd give it much more traction. Right,
yeah.
right.
I've got a record, and it's a record of a steam engine like this. Now, if you close your eyes, you'll hear a diesel, you'll hear the diesel horn, and then you'll hear the steam engine coming closer and closer. There's the diesel. There's the start of the steam engine. It's got a big load, so it's got to pull hard. Now it's really starting to pull hard and get the train moving. There's its whistle. Getting closer now. That's what it was like to stand beside the track when a steam engine came past. This is a steam engine whistle. Do you want to have a go at blowing it? Give it a good puff.
Across the golden fields of summer week, they labored in the sun. At night they drank their blaze away, a song or two was sung. On a winter morning in the Bathurst camp, the frost lay on the ground. The pick and shovel and the gangers' cry was the only sound. Hey, hey, what do you say? 100 years ago, they laid the rails out to Cowra town where the London River flows. They say on a cold night in Blaney, temperature gets low. A full load working up the 140s, the road sometimes gets slow. On a crystal night you can hear it coming down by Woodstock Road. A five-chime whistle in the distant hills, you can see the firebox glow. Hey, hey, what do you say? 100 years ago, they laid the rails out to Cowra town where the London River flows. So raise your glass and give a cheer and toast the railway days. In times of change it seems so strange to travel other ways. When the oil runs out you'll hear them shout, what we gonna do? We'll swing the banjo at the firebox door just like they used to do. Hey, hey, what do you say? 100 years ago, they They laid the rails out to Cowra town where the Lachlan River flows. Hey, hey, what do you say? 100 years ago, they laid the rails out to Cowra town where